The room is silent. No judge, no jury, just you, sitting across from the version of yourself who still begs to be understood. Your palms are open, your heart is racing. You want to say something, anything, to explain why you stayed quiet when you should have spoken, or why you spoke too much when silence was your only real weapon, but the words won't come. Because deep down, you already know there is nothing you can say that will change what you allowed. There's a clock on the wall. It's not ticking, it's watching. And in that stillness, you start to feel something ancient rise from beneath your skin. A memory of when you stopped needing to justify your choices and simply let your results speak louder than your mouth ever could. But we unlearn that, don't we? We become addicted to reaction, trained to explain, to post, to argue with ghosts online, trained to be so damn loud, we forget what real power sounds like. It doesn't sound like anything. It moves through silence. It's the look in the eyes of the man who says nothing, but already knows how the room will shift when he moves. It's the woman who watches everyone talk over each other, but when she finally speaks, the whole room shuts up. This is the new war, those who speak to be validated versus those who've evolved beyond the need. And you're not here to argue. You're here to reclaim the part of you that never needed to speak first. Because the future version of you, they don't persuade, they position, they don't react, they rearrange. And when they speak, the world listens. This world is not moved by those who speak first. It is shaped by those who learn to wait. It starts early. You're 5 years old. You spilled something on the floor. And the first thing you hear is, explain yourself. So you do. You try. You stammer through your guilt. Not because it makes it better, but because for a moment, if you explain well enough, you might not lose love. That seed is planted. And from that moment forward, every mistake becomes a performance. Not for correction, but for forgiveness, for approval, for the illusion of control. And that seed doesn't die. It grows. Into your teens, when you write texts that are paragraphs long, trying to defend your silence, your delay, your vibe. Into adulthood, where you overtalk in meetings, apologize for your ambition, soften your power so it doesn't scare the insecure. You tell yourself you're just being clear, but the truth is, you're just afraid. Afraid of being misunderstood because you still think that your value lives in other people's perception of your intention. Read that again. You still think your value lives in other people's perception of your intention. And because of that, you're not building, you're performing. Let me show you what this really costs. Every time you explain your dream to someone who doesn't believe in dreams, you dull your own fire. Every time you justify your boundaries to someone who profits from your lack of them, you unconsciously tell your nervous system, I don't trust myself. Every time you ask for understanding, you give up the throne of command and replace it with the leash of permission. But here's the deeper truth. You were never addicted to being understood. You were addicted to not being abandoned. Silence felt like rejection. Stillness felt like threat. And being unseen felt like death. So you spoke. You explained. You exposed. And in doing so, you gave away the one weapon that every powerful soul must guard. Your energetic mystery. Power isn't loud. It isn't fast. It isn't reactive. It's still. It's calm. It's surgical. And it watches longer than anyone else can endure. Ask yourself something brutal. Who would you become if you never explained yourself again? If you let your results do the talking, if you let your boundaries speak for themselves, if you let people misunderstand you and chose not to correct them, could you handle that level of sovereignty? Because here's what no one tells you. The people who don't need to be understood become the ones the world seeks to understand. Why? Because their silence becomes presence, and their presence becomes gravity, and their gravity bends reality around it. There is a mirror you've been avoiding. It's not the one in your bathroom. It's the one that shows you how much power you leak through explanation. You explain because you're not fully convinced of your own inner authority yet. And until that changes, you will continue to shapeshift for people who never deserved your energy in the first place. But when that part of you dies, the part that begs to be seen, to be validated, to be decoded, what's left behind is someone unshakable. Someone who doesn't chase clarity, they radiate it. Someone who doesn't prove, they embody. Someone who doesn't narrate every move. They let the room adjust to their frequency in silence. The addiction to being understood is a disguised fear of being forgotten. But here's the paradox. The less you explain, the more you become unforgettable. Because silence isn't absence, it's power restrained. And when power is restrained, the world senses it, feels it, tries to decode it. You no longer need to tell your story. Your silence becomes the story. Reflective loop. Silence is not absence. It's preparation. What would you lose if you stopped explaining? And what might you finally reclaim? Noise isn't just sound. It's a state of mind. A restless, reactive, low-frequency fog that blurs your focus and distorts your inner voice. And it's everywhere. You scroll, you post, you reply. You think you're connecting, but you're just broadcasting static into a void of people who forgot how to listen. You tell yourself, I'm just being real. But deep down, you're just terrified of being irrelevant, so you stay loud. But here's what no one teaches you. Loud souls are often just quiet souls who never learn to trust themselves. Overtalking is a symptom, a sign of internal misalignment. People who explain too much aren't confident. They're panicking that if they don't clarify, they'll be rejected. Panicking that if they don't justify, they'll be misunderstood. Panicking that if they don't speak now, they'll be forgotten forever. But the price of that panic is steep. Every unnecessary word you speak pulls you 1 inch further away from the clarity of your mission. And in a world that weaponizes distraction, this is not a small loss. It's a spiritual theft. Napoleon Hill once wrote, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it." But most people invert that law. They tell, they broadcast, they explain their dreams in detail to people who've never built anything in their lives. And in doing so, they rob the dream of its sacred tension. Because when you explain too early, you expose your seed to frost. You dig it up just to prove it exists and wonder why nothing grows. You can't manifest and seek validation at the same time. One is divine design. The other is energetic leakage. Picture this, a battlefield, fog everywhere. Hundreds of soldiers shouting orders, screaming insults, waving flags. It's chaos, noise, posture, ego. But then you see one figure, standing completely still, not speaking, not even blinking, watching. And something about that person terrifies the rest. Because stillness, in a world of noise, feels like prophecy. They're not uncertain. They're calculating. They're not retreating. They're selecting their moment. And when they finally move, the entire field shifts. You must understand this. Noise is the currency of the insecure. It's how the uncertain buy time. How the unprepared fake important. How the fearful pretend to be bold. But real power, it's not in volume. It's in vibration. It's in the gaze that doesn't blink. The hand that doesn't tremble. The voice that doesn't need to speak. Because presence alone does the talking. Reflective loop. They cannot hear you over who you are becoming. So here's the question you're not asking. Are your words proving something or protecting something? Are you speaking truth or covering fear? Are you clarifying for connection or over-communicating because you don't feel safe in your own frequency? There is a cost to every syllable that isn't rooted in power. And that cost isn't just emotional, it's directional. Noise doesn't just delay you, it detours you. And detours become decades if you don't learn how to reclaim your internal silence. Because once you taste that silence, the real kind, you won't want to go back. Not because you're avoiding life, but because you finally remembered that your energy is holy, that not everyone gets access, that explaining is no longer your job, embodying it. And the deeper truth, those who master silence don't disappear. They become legends, not because they shouted the loudest, but because they walked with such certainty that the world had to follow. They underestimate you when you're quiet. They think silence means passivity, that you have nothing to say, nothing to offer, no power to wield. They mistake your restraint for retreat. But power, real power, never introduces itself. It observes. It lets the room reveal itself first. The most dangerous person in any environment isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one who watches and waits. There's a reason the panther doesn't roar before it strikes. It watches. It calculates. It lets the prey get comfortable in its illusion of safety. That's how power moves. With timing, with discipline, with invisibility. Because power that needs to be seen isn't real. But power that observes, that's strategy. That's control. And silence is its armor. You've been taught to speak first, to assert yourself, to show confidence by being loud and visible. But the masters, they don't assert. They align. They enter a room and don't need to declare anything because their awareness does the speaking. Every move you make, every word you say, every insecurity you leak, they catch it, not with judgment, with precision, because they are not playing the game you think they're playing. They're already 10 moves ahead because they listen first. Observation is not about being passive. It's about being present enough to read the truth beneath the surface, because what people say is almost never what they mean. They perform, they bluff, they posture. And while they do, the observer waits, not for permission, not for drama, for the perfect moment to move. There's an old saying, let fools rush in while the wise prepare their terrain. But it's not about waiting forever. It's about knowing exactly when to strike. When the veil drops, when the weakness reveals itself, when the right word, at the right time, collapses an entire illusion. That's the kind of power you're here to remember. Not the power to control people, but the power to see them so clearly that you never need to. Reflective loop. Stillness is not sleep. It is study. You're not ignoring. You're inspecting. You're not uncertain. You're gathering range. You are building a map inside your mind. Not of their world, but of your next move. You're becoming what Hill called the quiet master, the one who listens to what's not said, the one who notices the shift in tone before the sentence ends. And in that awareness, you become untouchable, not because you fight better, but because you no longer walk into the traps everyone else calls conversation. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly watched? Without needing to respond? Not to argue, not to insert your opinion, not to validate, but to simply observe the truth, the pattern, the opportunity. Silence is what makes that possible. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of command. There is a rhythm to power, and most people are too noisy to hear it. They want to speak their identity into existence, but you are sculpting yours in the shadows, one quiet move at a time, one silent boundary, one private decision that doesn't need to be tweeted, posted, or explained. That's what separates you now. The loud play checkers, the silent play chess, in a room no one sees until the game is already over. Echo, you are not ignoring. You are inspecting. This is the turning point. You're no longer the one reacting the noise. You are the one building in silence, watching the patterns, reading the room, and remembering what they forgot. Power doesn't prove. Power positions. And it never needs to speak before it's ready. It's not the silence around you that changes your life. It's the silence within. Because no matter how many rooms you leave, no matter how many conversations you avoid, you can't outrun the noise that lives between your own thoughts. That's the real war, the one no one sees. You've been taught to manage time, to manage people, to manage your brand. But no one taught you how to manage your mind. No one taught you how to quiet the chaos that speaks in your own voice, masquerading as urgency, doubt, and fear. The inner monologue that questions every decision you make, that replays old wounds, that crafts imaginary conversations with people who don't even think about you. That's the real thief, the real noise, and it robs you silently because it sounds familiar. But here's the truth most will never face. Until you master inner silence, outer silence will feel like punishment. That's why people scroll instead of sit, post instead of pause, react instead of reflect. Stillness terrifies the untrained mind because it brings up everything you've been avoiding. But stillness is not a void. It's a door, a passage, a sacred inner chamber where the future version of you already sits, calm, knowing, waiting for you to stop fighting long enough to hear them. Visualize this: a temple, ancient stone, unmoved by centuries of storms. In the center, a single flame that never goes out. That's you. But only when you stop letting noise rewrite your worth. Only when you realize that your inner voice, the real one, the one beneath the ego, never raises its tone. It whispers, it nudges, it guides, but it will not compete with chaos. You must choose to make space for it. Napoleon Hill didn't just talk about desire. He talked about organized thought. He taught that clarity was spiritual power and that only a quiet mind could receive definite purpose. Think about that. You've been trying to achieve your next level. But what if it's not about effort? What if it's about access? And what if the password is inner stillness? Reflective loop. There's a voice louder than words. You've heard it before. It's the voice you heard right before you walked away from the wrong crowd. The voice that told you to send that message, or not send it. The voice that knew the job wasn't aligned, even when everyone told you to take it. That voice wasn't fear. It was you in higher form. But you've layered it under so much noise, you only hear it when life falls apart. Why wait? Why wait until the chaos becomes unbearable before returning to the stillness you were born with? You are not here to react. You are here to radiate. You are not here to prove. You are here to become. But you can't do that with a mind addicted to distraction. So start now. Choose quiet, even if it's uncomfortable. Choose observation, even if it feels slow. Choose silence, even when every part of your past identity is begging you to speak. Because power doesn't arrive through noise. It's revealed in the space between thoughts. What would change if your silence wasn't emptiness, but command? This is where everything changes. Because silence without motion becomes stagnation, but silence with strategy becomes prophecy. There is a shift, subtle, but irreversible, when the quiet one finally starts to move. Not with noise, not with explanation, but with precision, and the world can feel it. You've seen it before. That person who didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't fight to be seen. They just disappeared for a while. No update, no announcement, no explanations. And when they came back, they were unrecognizable. Different presence, different tone. A certain glow that doesn't come from external success, but from the violent clarity that comes after choosing yourself in silence. That's not glow-up energy. That's rebirth energy. See, the loud will always try to draw attention to their movement. But the real ones, they let the results introduce them. No build-up, no warning, just impact, like a blade drawn in silence, like a temple emerging from the fog. Because when the silent begin to move, they no longer seek approval, they execute. They don't try to become, they embody. They don't ask, they impose. You have to understand this deeply. By the time you speak, by the time the world hears your name, you've already made the move. Power works in reverse. It moves first and explains never. This is why so many people fail. They try to speak power into existence instead of becoming the kind of person whose presence cannot be ignored. They post about it. You train in the dark. They tell people what they're going to do. You're already doing it. And that's the difference. Visual metaphor. A warrior in a mountain temple. Not training to show off. Not training for the crowd. Training because something inside demands it. A quiet fire. A sharpened blade. No applause. Only mastery. And when the time comes, they descend from the mountain and change the shape of the battlefield in a single move. Not because they were seen. Because they were ready. Echo. Move in silence, but move with fire. You've been holding back. Not because you're weak, but because you were still explaining, still negotiating with past versions of yourself. That ends now. You don't talk your way into alignment. You move. You decide. You take the step no one sees and let the echo carry your name into rooms you never begged to enter. Because now the part of you that needed to be understood is gone. All that's left is command. This is what Napoleon Hill meant when he wrote, "The world has the habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show that he knows where he is going." Not the man who announces, the man who embodies, not the woman who overexplains, the woman who doesn't even need to explain because her very presence feels like a decision the universe already made. You are that. If you're willing to let the noise die, if you're willing to move without narrating. And when you do, everything around you shifts. Because silence no longer signals preparation. It signals that the real you has arrived. Reflective loop. Stop explaining. Start rearranging. Are you explaining your moves or embodying your outcome? It's quiet again, but this time it's different. This silence doesn't feel like hesitation. It feels like precision. The room hasn't changed. You have. Because you're no longer the one who watches to survive. You are the one who watches to shape. Not a victim of the moment, but the sculptor of it. You've crossed the line now, an invisible threshold few ever find, where you no longer just observe the world, you design within it. No need to chase, no need to shout, no need to demand anything from anyone, because the most powerful people don't force change. They become the gravitational field that makes change inevitable. Visualize it. Stone, cold, heavy, raw. And you, chisel in hand, breath calm, eyes steady. not rushing, not reacting, just striking again and again in silence, shaping something eternal. That stone is your life, and no one else can carve it. They can comment, they can criticize, but they cannot touch it unless you hand them the tools. You're not here to be interpreted. You're here to become undeniable. And now you understand, silence is not the absence of identity. It's the birthplace of it. You've stopped announcing your arrival, because arrival is not a moment. It's a vibration. You walk into rooms differently now. You look into chaos and see design. You watch people talk and see patterns. You no longer need to explain yourself, because your silence no longer feels like a lack. It feels like an omen, a warning, a whisper from the future. They have no idea what you're about to become. And here's the deepest truth of all. The world doesn't remember those who spoke the most. It remembers those who moved with such presence that it had to reshape itself to match them. You are no longer just a watcher. You are the sculptor, the silent force, the one who doesn't demand a legacy, but builds it one move at a time, in the quiet, with the kind of calm that only comes from inner command. Echo, they will never see you coming because you stopped announcing your arrival. You don't owe the world an explanation, only an example, a quiet one, built in the dark, moved with fire, unshaken by noise, unmoved by opinion, unseen, until it's too late to stop you. You've carried the code all along. Now you have the key, use it.